Today I'm talking to Lizzie Brooks. Lizzie Brooks has been a yoga teacher for 21 years, even though she actually doesn't look old enough to have been teaching yoga for 21 years. She's a contributor to the very prestigious journal Yoga International as well. So I'm really, really pleased to have her here to talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jane. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Okay, so can you tell us a bit about yourself before we start really to talk about yoga?
Absolutely. So I, as you said, I've been teaching for 21 years. I am 41, so it's all about good lighting. So that's what that is. That's the trick. And yoga helps. I'm a mom and a wife here in Austin, Texas. And as you know, I do write wellness and yoga articles as well as children's books. So everything I do sort of has a wellness, health, mindfulness integrated with kind of a casual silliness, lightheartedness. So it's kind of a digestible way to give information without feeling like people are going to be like, but I can't do everything at once all the time. We can baby step in the right direction of health.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I came across you via your channel on YouTube, and I did like that slightly sort of casual isn't quite the right word, but it's something like that, you know, because some people, when they're teaching Pilates, yoga, Tai Chi, gym work, whatever it is, are very, very intense.
Yes.
And, you know, you feel like I've got to get it right. I must get everything right.
I think it's a stringent way of looking at things, kind of a little too strict, more of a one size fits all. And as I've said before, and I've heard this too, and it just resonated with me, we need to change our movement and our yoga for ourselves, not changing ourselves for our movement in the yoga. So it's like, don't try to fit into a mold or a box of this one size fits all, but rather let's modify these modalities, these movement modalities, to meet us exactly where we are. And so, of course, I like to bring a lightheartedness to it, but I say that I teach seriously good yoga that's not too serious, so that I'm not up here on this pedestal like I can do everything and now I'm just going to flip upside down and you guys can just like wonder how that happened, you know. Really, really easily accessible stuff at whatever level you're at. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, there's different schools of yoga, aren't there?
Yes. Yes.
And to the novice, that can seem somewhat overwhelming. And so, right. You know, if somebody start thinking about doing yoga, how do they choose?
Right, exactly. Actually, I just made a video called, My Doctor Told Me to Do Yoga, Now What? So that's coming out. It's only like 15 minutes, but really it's because like yoga is such a vast term. And so many people are like, well, I think I should do yoga. So they just find the kind of nearest yoga place, or they just type in yoga to YouTube and they go, okay, well, this is yoga, so I'll do yoga. And there are as many types, varieties, styles of yoga as there are cars on the road. And if we just pop into one and that happens to be a Corvette and we were not ready to be there yet, then it can be really off-putting and we can have a negative experience. Same thing if you wanted a more rigorous practice and you were feeling really energized and you came to a yoga that was basically restorative yoga, where you lay maybe in 5 postures over an hour and kind of it's more restful, relaxing. And there's everything in between. So I think what that takes is a little bit of asking questions. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments in my comment sections or from my website. But the other thing is just looking, maybe watching a few videos. If this says hatha, what does that mean? If this says hatha flow, if this is power yoga, if this is gentle, and just getting a taste into what that means and looking at it and going, does that look like something that looks like I would feel good in there? Or does that look like I'd be confused? And you want to look for instructors that offer modifications. This is a big one. So if you just go into a class or watch a class where the person says, okay, now do Virabhadrasana 1 and 2 and Trikonasana, and you're like, they're speaking in Sanskrit. I have no idea what they're saying. That doesn't bode for confidence in that person. And that doesn't make them want to return. So you're looking for the delivery from the teacher to be as accessible to you and so you can understand as possible. Where you don't feel like, well, I tried it once and it was too hard, or it was too weird, or I didn't understand. I even have a class that's called Brand New to Yoga, which is just, you've never done it, and here it is. And then for people who have gone to those classes or tried those classes that they were like deer in headlights, this wasn't for me. A lot of them express that they now hate yoga, dislike yoga, never want to do it again. And I had spoken to you before that the top video on my channel is yoga for people who hate yoga, because there are many of us who have gone and gone, well, I'm never going back. So this is that slow entry back where it's inviting you without overwhelming you with terminology, without expecting you to have 2-mile-long hamstrings, all of this, where people can say, oh, there is a yoga for me. So seeing what you don't like, seeing what you do like, and looking for a delivery that meets you at your level of understanding.
Fantastic. I mean, I tried yoga. I'm one of these people who tried yoga. I guess it must have been in my 20s or 30s. And I went several times, and the yoga teacher kept on saying, relax, relax.
Doesn't that make you want to relax?
And I was like getting more and more tense because I couldn't do what she was asking us to do. Right. And not only couldn't I get into the posture, I also couldn't relax. So I was one of these people who said, oh, yoga's not for me, because of that bad initial experience.
Yes. And these teachers, we're just humans, so we're not going to do it perfectly, but telling someone, have you ever, that's the same thing as when someone says, calm down, and you're like, well, now I'm not calm. You just told me to calm down. So instead, what she should have done, or I can't remember if you said it was male or female, but given you the tools, given you some instruction of how you could relax, not telling you relax, because that doesn't tell you how to do anything.
Yeah.
What that instructor could have said is, okay, relax, or breathe slower than you were. Stop doing this posture if it feels like it's too intense, and instead do this variation. And then they would give you a lesser variation as far as intensity goes to calm your nervous system, to put you into something really attainable for your body. And then they should have brought your attention to the breath, because the breath is the highway to calming the nervous system. When we are in that fight or flight, you'll notice that the breath is usually stiffer, higher up, we're not getting as much. But if we can just focus on the breathing, then the muscles, the chemicals in the body, everything are going to shift in that direction. So telling someone to relax is actually kind of telling them to do the opposite.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, I do now feel slightly foolish because it's a bit like, I don't know, going to a restaurant and saying, the first time you've tried, I don't know, Mexican or Chinese food, and not enjoying your meal and going, oh, I won't eat Chinese food ever again.
Right.
Because it's horrible.
And there's a couple things there with that. The metaphor there is our taste changes, right? So it could be that the next time you went there, your taste has changed, your body, your life circumstance is different, and you tend to like it. Just like my son, who used to not like avocados and now he loves them. And you might go to a different chef, and that chef is going to prepare that meal completely differently. And it's going to totally be like, oh, these are the nutrients I needed. This is the flavor, combination that I like. And so that's why I say try different things, just like you would try different restaurants.
Yeah.
And within that, sometimes people need to know that if they go to a class, whatever's instructed, they don't have to do every single thing that's instructed. So it's like going to a buffet and being told you have to eat every single thing on this buffet. No, you can pick and choose what works for you, and you can skip what doesn't. And it doesn't mean that some other time down the road, this will be something that you try. It's just not necessarily today.
Yeah, and if you have a teacher who doesn't accept that, I would say then probably don't go to that teacher's class, I think.
Run for the hills, run to another yoga teacher. Oftentimes actually all times that's about the yoga teacher. So there's luckily things are changing and shifting, and I don't see this as much, but there used to be such a kind of showiness, like this is getting less and less, but where the teacher would just kick up into a handstand and say, okay, now go upside down. And if you can't go upside down, go into child's pose. So you're telling me that I'm either going to try this thing and I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm going to feel like the only other thing I can do in between that is lay on my mat in a ball, with nothing in between. Now I'm finding more and more people are taking care of people, different ages, different body types, different injuries, this kind of thing. It doesn't mean that those teachers aren't out there who are still doing that. And also sometimes the teachers have the best of intentions, but they haven't been trained correctly, or that maybe they're brand new and someone
very
here
nervous.
Right. Yes. And they're thinking more about themselves than the actual class, which comes with time when you're not thinking so much about yourself, but you can really focus on the other person, which is sort of like in public classes, I can do that obviously more. And then in private lessons. So I do teach Zoom private lessons, and where we can really hone in, and that we have a conversation where, okay, so how does this feel? And then they'll say, okay, but kind of in this knee. And I'll say, well, let's change this footing. And so it's very geared exactly to what that person is feeling, also their lifestyle. So I'll give lifestyle changes that also help, versus just going to a class and being like, that's all the yoga you do. There are changes in the way that you sit, changes in the way that where your hips are in relation to your knees, if you sit a lot or drive a lot, that will shift that so that the yoga is working for you all day rather than the blip of time that you took that class.
Yeah. Great. And I mean, now chair yoga is becoming popular for elderly people who can't stand and maybe can't get on the floor, or people who are disabled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. Also, it's great for that. It's also great for people who are even younger, but they have an injury, and so they can't do certain things at that time. I think chair yoga makes it a lot more accessible, because a lot of times you'll have a surgery, you'll have an injury, you'll feel kind of creaky in your body, and you'll say, well, I guess I can't do this. So instead of saying you can't, well, what can we do? Right. And that chair gives us a place where we can still do a whole lot of movement, blood flow, get that circulation going for healing. There are so many studies on just circulation alone, circulation and breathing alone, and then adding stretch, that brings so much more healing to injury versus just bed rest, where I'm like, well, I have this issue, so I'm just going to rest in bed, versus having some movement. And it doesn't have to be super strenuous to actually be super impactful. And that's not to say that I don't teach the opposite of like a chair yoga or something. I teach all the way from gentle all the way to, arm balances and that kind of thing. But it's just finding where you need to be on that particular day, and not, because you can burn out with too much yoga, like too much of even anything, right? And sometimes people think in yoga, well, I'm going to do yoga every single day. And they choose a form of yoga that's like Ashtanga or this Hatha flow that's really, really challenging, really difficult. And they're not taking rest in between. And you can burn out on yoga. So it's all about balance, but we need to do the things that actually bring us balance.
Yeah. I just want to focus back on you personally for a minute, because I know, looking at you, you look the picture of health. And you said to me that your parents describe you as the healthiest unhealthy person in the world, I think it was. Yes. And I thought that was such a great way of looking at it in a way. So can you tell us a bit about this healthiest unhealthy person in the world?
Yeah, sure. So looks can be deceiving. And also I tend to be very kind of like how I come across as energetic, but that's also balanced with a lot of rest and a lot of care. So I have autoimmune issues, and I've struggled with gut issues and all sorts of not really thriving as a child, and just getting these, migraines and headaches and then stomach aches, and going to multiple doctors and not really knowing what was wrong. And I've since gotten a lot of diagnoses, undifferentiated connective tissue disease. They basically are saying I have components of multiple autoimmune disorders. So I don't live under one exact thing. That endometriosis, migraines, I've been diagnosed with Lyme disease, fibromyalgia. I mean, I've been given a lot of, pieces of paper that's like, here's what you are. And I say, thank you very much. I'm going to go home and do some breathing and some yoga and eat well, and try to not take a bunch of toxins into my body. So the thing that I've learned is no matter what diagnosis I've been given, the best thing that I can do for myself is to not title myself, like write that over my forehead, and then that's where I'm going to live. Instead, I can say, okay, well, I have certain things that aren't maybe going as well as I would like. What can I do? What can I do, and how can I stay in that more positive mindset rather than going down the rabbit hole, that spiral of going on the internet and what does this mean and what am I going to do? Not that I don't research, that's great. But what I have found is breathing, meditation, yoga, eating well, and also eating with balance, meaning I've spoken to you before. I love a glass of red wine. I love dark chocolate. These things, if we totally try to go in this direction, like now I have to be perfect in my health and I can't ever have this pleasure. Well, you're actually robbing yourself of pleasure, and not allowing yourself to do anything like that causes stress in the body. So what's worse? Would it be worse to have the glass of wine or to have the stress of you going, oh my God, I can't have that. I can't have, this is different, of course, if you have alcoholism or something like that. I'm not saying that. Obviously stay away from it then. But if I'm going to eat a piece of chocolate and enjoy that versus going, I can't have the chocolate, I can't have the chocolate, I can't have the chocolate, I can't have the, and having my cortisol and my adrenaline and everything like that pull up, where I'm now in more of a fight or flight versus in that calm parasympathetic nervous system, where I don't want. So I think that everybody's going to be different. And many of us have certain diagnoses, and we need to actually, definitely listen to your doctors. But what is in your control? What's in your control? Instead of going, well, I have this and that seems really out of control, and now I have it and I have it forever. And I might have some of these things forever. Okay. But if I can calm down and take a look at it from a more positive place versus a fear-based place, there's no doubt I'm going to feel better and do better. And of course, I have bad days too. I'm human. So what I generally do is I make sure that I do some movement every day. And if I'm a writer, so I do a lot of sitting, and I think some of the yoga you'll be using in your program are my yoga for people who sit a lot. I'm a writer, I sit a lot. Even if I'm like, wow, today is jam-packed, but I have 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes are way more impactful than just saying, well, I only have 10 minutes, so I might as well not do it, right? So we can care for ourselves no matter what's going on in our bodies by just choosing even small bits of time, small changes to our diets, rather than saying, well, now I've just got to shift everything, because that's too much. That's too overwhelming to even remember how to do it and to get into the habit of doing it. So as I always say, baby steps in the direction of health will add up. If you drink one more glass of water today than you did yesterday, great. If you did 10 minutes of movement today versus 0 movement, moments yesterday, great. And all of that adds up to feeling better and having a better mindset.
Yeah. I mean, my diet is 5% rubbish.
Great.
Actually, I think it's getting even less than that now, but
Yeah.
I used to say 10%, and then I went to 5%, and now I think it's less. But it's that, good chocolate, is actually benefit.
It does have some benefit to it.
It does have some benefit, but there's a tendency to overestimate the benefit, I think, for people who like chocolate.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think, allowing yourself some of this stuff, and so one of the things I find is by saying I have a 5% rubbish diet, when I do eat rubbish, I don't get into that mindset of, oh, I've done it now, I might as well carry on eating rubbish, for the rest of the day.
Yes. So many people say, well, I was working really well on my diet, and then yesterday I had 2 pieces of cake, and so now I'm just like off the diet. And it's like, no, you were on the diet and you had 2 pieces of cake, and now today's a new day. Take care of yourself. That's okay. Same thing with yoga. People will say, well, I was doing yoga and I was being so consistent, and then I just quit for 2 weeks. And now it's like, well, I don't think I do it anymore. It's like, no, you quit for you didn't quit. You paused.
Yes.
It's not a stop. I always tell students, it's not a stop. It's a pause. Just like when you're reading a book and you put your bookmark in, you can come back at any time, or pause a movie and come back at any time. And you haven't, those next chapters of your yoga practice or movement practice that you stopped, they're not written yet. They're also not done just because you took a pause. So I think giving ourselves permission to be human rather than these superhumans. I think we're comparing ourselves to these fitness people and these models and the stuff that we see online. And by the way, comparing ourselves to that, you're comparing yourself to a sliver of what they're even showing you.
Yes.
So we don't even actually know what we're comparing ourselves to. And I think just recognizing that there's going to be days when we're maybe a little more committed and a little more determined, and days when our willpower isn't quite as much there. And that's actually kind of balance, right? Yeah. And that's okay.
How have you managed to get so wise by your early 40s? I sort of think I'm getting quite wise now, but it took me well into my 60s before I felt I had any wisdom. So how have you managed to get so wise so young?
That's really kind of you to say. My mom said, my parents say I'm an old soul. So I think I came out pretty old. Like when I was very, very young, like 4 or 5 years old, my mom says I came to her and I said, Mommy, I'm in too many activities and I need some me time. I was doing tap and ballet and Campfire Girls and all this. And I just recognized that it was making me feel a little like, and then the other side of that, the flip side of that, is these health issues that I have made me wiser. They have made me consider things that I think younger people who just kind of maybe take their health for granted aren't considering. Recognizing when I need to slow down, that I'm feeling like I'm going to burn out. I have a tendency, I'm a really determined person. I want to get a lot done. But recognizing that if I keep that pace all the time, I'm going to feel worse, is that it offers a balance to me. And also feeling bad in my body, knowing there are times when my knees have been so bad that I'm icing them every night. There have been times when the migraine is so bad I can't get out of bed. It's made me understand my students so much more. So it has offered an insight to not just be like, everything's easy for me and you should do it too. To actually say, like, I know what it is to feel really bad inside of my body and emotionally, and to see how that drains you. And then to recognize what I can do, mind, breath, body, to feel better, and then offer that out.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad that you enjoy it. I feel blessed that you found me, my little baby YouTube channel that I started 11 months ago.
I'm sure it's going to be really, really successful, because it's got such a range of different types of videos on it, and your enthusiasm and realness is very infectious. It's really, really lovely. So to find your YouTube channel, people go to YouTube and put in Lizzie Brooks. Yeah.
Yeah, Lizzie Brooks should pop up. It's Lizzie with an IE. And I think if you type in Lizzie Brooks Yoga or Lizzie Brooks Yoga and Fitness, it'll definitely pop up. And kind of commenting on what you said, piggybacking off of that, I've been told by a million people who've like come to me and asked if I need marketing help and this and that I need to really niche down, that I should only teach one type of yoga, that I should only teach getting down to like even just teach this one posture really well and be the person who does that. And I just said, well, the joy would be taken out of it for me. Yeah. And also the way that I have researched the body and the mind, they thrive on variety. And we create new neural pathways by changing our movements and the way that we work, even just crossing the midline versus just always doing something here. I mean, science has shown I believe it was a NASA study. They did, some people were only doing crossword, like word puzzles, for cognitive ability. And some were just doing exercise. Some were doing nothing. And some were doing the crossword and the exercise. And the crossword and the exercise group, who were mentally working and then physically working, were leaps and bounds above the others, leaps and bounds. And so bringing in that variety is critical. So on my site, on the YouTube, I think there's like maybe 105 videos or more, a little more than that. And for those who are just starting out, you would want to go to my beginner friendly section. There's gentle stuff there. There's certain ones that are just meditation or breathing. And you can kind of play around the way that they organize the channels. You can't put as many as you want into each section. So if you click just the videos tab, you'll be able to see everything and kind of pick and choose how you feel that day and what you want. I'm also open to people, if you leave a comment under a video, like, this is what's going on with me, what would you recommend? Then I can share some links with them for specific videos that would be more geared to what they need, so they're less confused. And people can also email me from my website, lizziebrooksyoga.com. There's a form there, and I will get those, and I can help with that. And then same thing with private lessons. Yeah. But choose how you feel based on the day. And even if you, like I was saying earlier, even if you start a video and that video is 40 minutes long and you only have 10 minutes, do 10 minutes, turn it off, come back. Yeah, be easy on yourself.
So if people want more of Lizzie Brooks, and I can imagine they will, they can go to your YouTube channel, they can go to your website. People, you do private lessons, and you can do those over Zoom. So
yes,
providing the time differences too horrendous.
Yeah, it's been really successful. The Zoom classes, I was kind of like, after teaching 20 years in person and then starting on Zoom, I was like, how's this going to go? But surprisingly really well. And I sent a questionnaire before, and we can kind of really hone in on what we want to work on. And then I do a follow-up as well. So you get kind of before the class, and then you also get a follow-up just to see how things went and if we need to tweak anything. And I find I always want to leave people feeling like their mind was a little blown, because how often do we have someone looking just at our movement, at our body, at saying, okay, but if this doesn't feel right, let's shift and do this one instead, so that we create a movement for the body that is only going to be positive, versus if you're just in a big class of a bunch of people or just online and you're feeling something, you're kind of confused. What do I do? Yes. This sheds light on what to do to make it feel really good and to make a really positive shift.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed talking to you. It's been great. And you are an old soul. I mean, when I think of myself at your age, and I was just sort of careering around all over the place, and
yes,
you have such wisdom. I mean, what are you going to be like by the time you get to my age? Maybe you'll have ascended into heaven or become enlightened or something.
Oh, that's so funny. No, I feel I've always felt old. I've always felt like I got along with older people, and that I just, it's just what it is. And then I think the yoga brings you more deep into yourself, into inner listening, which I think makes you feel even more connected, where you're not just living on the surface. Not that I don't have those days of being like frantic, what am I going to do? Yes. But that listening in that it gives you, where it's not just the physical, but you're like, oh, I didn't even know I was feeling that until I paused for a moment. How can I address that? So going into that emotional state, going internally, so that we don't act in ways that we wouldn't like to towards other people. So I think what it does is you check in with yourself, you take care of yourself, so that your reactivity is not kind of chaotic towards other people. Right. So there was a reading I just did. In fact, I'm going to grab it real fast.
Okay.
It says, this line was the reading that I did in my Zoom class. I teach live. I forgot to tell you, I teach live Zoom classes every other Friday.
So people can find those via your website as well, yes. Presumably. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I read this, I always do a reading and then we have a theme and that kind of thing. But it says, everything in your life flows from the relationship to yourself. And I just feel that it's so true that if the relationship that we have to ourselves is contentious, if we're negative, if we're feeling bad, how are we then going to be positive and open and warm to other people if our relationship to ourselves is that negative? So creating a relationship to ourselves that is positive and nurturing, not that it's going to be that way all the time, not that we don't have negative chatter, but the more we can do that, then the more we speak with love. We have less regret about how we reacted to somebody else over time. Someone once said, having unresolved anger and sadness and frustration is like holding a beach ball underwater. At some point, it's going to pop up in some way, and maybe even more explosive than it would have if we would have had kind of addressed it at the beginning. So looking towards this yoga, these classes that people come to me for, just as much emotionally as physically. So that's what I hope to accomplish, is just to make us feel better inside so we can make a better external world as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
I've really enjoyed it. I love that you're doing this program. I think it's going to be super beneficial, and it sounds like you're so researched and you have wonderful people coming in. I think it's going to be so helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.